Okay, so far as I'm concerned, I've been thinking, there's so many things, so many so-called professions out there that I really think need to be moved down to being labeled as a hobby. Acting needs to be labeled as a hobby. Needs to stop being looked at as a profession. Then they wouldn't be paid so much. It's a hobby. To me, acting's a hobby. It's not a profession. It's a hobby. Okay. Archaeology is a hobby. Should be classified down. It should be brought down to a hobby, not a profession. Anthropologists, anthropology, same thing. It needs to be brought down to being a hobby, not a profession. See, if you take them, if you stop them from being professions, labeled a profession, these people would be paid more, the money they don't deserve. Actors don't deserve the money they make. Archaeologists don't deserve the money they make. And anthropologists don't deserve the money they make. As far as I'm concerned. Okay. Um, and yes, professional athletes needs to be labeled as a hobby. Playing games, hobby. It's a hobby playing games. Literally a hobby. Musicians, um, yeah, should be labeled as a hobby. And I guess if you make money at those hobbies, that's good. But they shouldn't. I don't know. Maybe musicians are something else because you really do have to learn the right way to do it. You know, like to play like sports. I mean, to play sports, you know, there's really no right way to do it. It's like when it comes to music, you gotta put the right chords together to make the right sound. You know, I mean, it's like it's a fact. It's a fact. So when you have facts to back up like what you do, you have facts to back it up. Then it should be looked at as a profession. Like all these like people who like are digging up like these old like the past, and their conclusions are not factual conclusions. All their conclusions are based on their opinions when it comes to archaeologists and anthropologists. Okay, they find these bones and they get take it to a computer and they try to reenact what the person looked like, but it doesn't prove they look that way. The only way you know if they look that way if you were alive back then to meet them in person. That's the only way you're gonna know how they really looked. Or if you have video of them, or if you have photos of them, you know, then you'll be able to see what they look like. But prior to cameras, prior to being able to develop pictures, before that time, we have no idea what those people really look like. All we have are drawings of them, someone else's drawings of these people. You know, can't go by drawings of people. Okay, you have to go have they have an actual photo of them to know they look that way, or you have to have met them in person to know how they really looked. You know, and we really need to stop teaching that stuff in schools because really it's a waste of time to learn that stuff in school. You know, anthropology, archaeology, it's a waste of time teaching that to people because none of it's based in fact, cold hard fact. You know, mathematics is important because it's based in fact. Biology based in fact. Okay, the human system has to work a certain way to survive. It's a fact, right? So like we have to really start thinking like U.S. history should only be taught to a certain um, time. Like it should only go back so far when you teach history. Like you shouldn't be teaching history if you have no like picked photos, like photos or video or people who actually were alive back then to back up, to back it up. Anything, you shouldn't be able to teach history that far back. Like Civil War, the American Civil War shouldn't be taught in schools anymore. It's a waste of time because we don't have any actual photos of what happened back then. We don't have anybody alive. They haven't been, we really never had anybody alive who was actually there to tell us about it. You know, we don't have them on video. Like, see, in World War II, we have video proof of what happened back then. Even World War One, we have video proof of what happened back then. We had, you had that's why you had the journalists um, following them, recording the war, because we have actual footage of that war existed. But we don't have that when it comes to the Civil War. We don't have any actual photos, any actual, like I said, people who were around back then telling us how it really happened. And, I mean, it's too far back. It's just too far back to know what happened for any person to come up, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you can't go by people's words because words lie. Everybody's words lie. Back then, they lied just like they do now. Like I said, man, the reason you have to sensationalize the story because then people, if you don't sensationalize a story, most stories that are like, you tell this that just like the plain truth. That's what they call it, the plain truth, because it's plain and boring, and nobody, like, if you write it down, nobody's going to read it because it's plain and boring truth. And that's why writers sensationalize everything they write, because people will read it then, because then it's exciting enough to read, and that's how it works. So you can't go by what you read. You can't go by what you read in books when it comes to, like, that stuff. Like mathematics. That's the only thing. Those are the only books you can believe are the math books, the biology books. You know, those are the only books you can believe because it's true. Because it has to. If something works in the real world based on a certain type of conclusions, that conclusion should be that should be taught because that's a fact. You know, but like there's so many professions out there. We need to move class categories back as a hobby that are like professions nowadays. Like psychology, that should be a hobby, not a profession. Because psychology is all opinion based. It's all opinion based. You got these psychologists, and they're giving their opinion on what's wrong with the patient. Okay, they don't, nothing they're saying is fact because everybody in the whole world has to agree with their opinion on their finding, but not everybody's going to do it. Someone's going to say, hey, no, you're all wrong about this guy, about these psychologists. So psychology should be looked at as a hobby, and it shouldn't be a profession. That way, you don't have to pay them like nothing. Like psychologists shouldn't be paid any money. Actually, actors and actresses shouldn't be paid any money. Actually, archaeologists shouldn't be paid for what they do, and anthropologists shouldn't be paid for what they do. But nowadays, you get paid for hobbies. Nowadays, people actually that's the problem. You got people who make up the people who invent hobbies. They're the ones making the most money, which is why this whole world's screwed up. You know, because they're not really adding to. They're not making anything. They're not really coming up with anything that's gonna help society move along. It's a matter of opinion if a hobby is gonna be fun to do. It's not a fact. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I've been thinking about it. It's just common sense, man. When you really think about it, archaeology. It's like it's not based off of anything factual. The only thing factual is the old bones they're finding and all the crap they find. But it doesn't really prove how they lived back then. It's like you're looking at. If you want to prove how someone lived, go by something that's alive. You want to go by something that's alive if you want to see how it lived. They're not alive anymore. They've been dead years and years and years and years. So there's no way we have any idea how those primitive species lived or how they looked or how we have no idea. These archaeologists have no idea. They're just going off their opinions. Their opinions. And then the computer guy, he's taking the bones, and I don't care. It's all opinionated. Archaeology is 100% opinionated, and when it goes, when they're trying to determine what like Neanderthals, how they lived and what they look like, and there's no way, you know. So all they do is that's how they come up with their general statements. That's all they can come up with is their general statements. That Neanderthal men were 5'6" or 5'5", I think, or 5'6", between 5'6" and 5'7", 115 to 125 pounds. They were in that bracket. You can't put bracket on stuff like you can't put things like that in the bracket. That's making a blanket statement when you put it in the bracket. And they say, the women were like 5'3", 5'5", 105 to 110 pounds. You know how stupid that sounds. It's you think about it. That's so stupid. Anyway, because it didn't happen that way. It didn't happen that way. It's a fact.